Hello, and welcome back again to Better Leader, Richer Life. This is week 3 of our course, and I'm glad you're here. Let me start by commending you on the progress you've made so far. You've just completed the first major part of the Total Leadership Program, in which we focused on the idea of being real, acting with authenticity by clarifying what's important in your life. Through your work on last week's assignments, you should now have a more clear idea of what really matters to you. This is the root for your leadership growth. Last week, we covered a lot of important ground, so let's quickly review. I talked with you about telling the story of how your values have been shaped by your personal history, about the power of a useful leadership vision and how to articulate yours, and about how to take the four-way view by identifying the relative importance of the 4 main domains of your life, how compatible they are with each other, and how much you focus your attention on each domain. And I offered guidance on how to give and receive coaching with your classmates. At this point, you've had an opportunity to write about your history, your vision, and your 4-way view. I hope you've gained useful insights about the allocation of your attention to the different life domains, the goals and interests you pursue in each of them, and about how you feel about how things are going in each facet of your life. You may have already started to think about ideas for the experiments you might try a little later on in our course, changes that you'll design to make things better, to produce 4-way wins, improved performance in all the domains of your life. And you had your first opportunity to provide coaching and feedback to your classmates. I hope you found it useful to comment on what they wrote about their self-assessment and goals in Assignment 1, and that you discovered new ways of thinking as a result of reading your classmates' assignments. This week, you'll have a chance to comment on what 3 of your classmates wrote in Assignment 2 about what it means for them to be real. I hope you'll keep this question in mind as you do so. How can I be most helpful as a coach? The main thing, again, is to ask caring questions that you believe will help your classmates think further about what they've written. And this week, you'll get to see what your classmates said about your first assignment. I trust that the comments you receive from them are useful to you, and that they'll give you new perspectives for you to consider about your self-assessment and goals. As I said last week, please do your best to be open to this feedback and inquire about it. What can I learn from what my classmates have written in response to my assignment? Try to see their comments as a source of knowledge for you, something for you to consider as you cultivate your growth as a leader in our course. Keep in mind that for all of us, it's perfectly natural to bristle at what feels like criticism, even when it may indeed simply be a new and different way of looking at your situation. That's one of the reasons that writing the feedback is so important, rather than simply a voice-to-voice or face-to-face chat. After the initial shock, your initial reaction, maybe you're feeling defensive. Well, because it's written, though, you can go back and read the feedback again, perhaps with a new appreciation for what others have written about you and what you've said about your goals and your self-assessment. It can be hard not to react, even overreact, but try to put your natural, understandable defensiveness, put it aside, and again, try to look with renewed openness to learn. You may have some questions about the assignments, about the peer feedback and evaluation, or other aspects of this course. We will try our best to address all of these questions in our forums, in the FAQs, and through the other channels we have available to communicate. Now, in this 3rd week of our course, there are again 4 lectures, starting with this one. Our focus is on the 2nd of the 3 main principles in total leadership, being whole, acting with integrity by respecting the whole person. The Latin root of the word integrity is one. The question before us is, how do the different domains fit into one coherent whole? How do the different domains of work or school, home or family, community, and your private self, how do they form a whole that is you? What does it mean for you to respect the whole person? We'll start by exploring who really matters to you. You'll identify the most important people in your life, what I call your key stakeholders, people who you believe have an important stake in your future, and what you expect of them, as well as what they expect of you. You'll be viewing things from the perspective of others, taking stock of your relationships with the people who really matter to you. You will choose who these people are. We'll expand and deepen the notion of performance expectations to see how it applies not just to work, but to all the important people in your life. At work or in school, you might be accustomed to thinking about performance expectations and how to meet them. But here you'll ask not just what they expect of you and what you expect of them, but also how well these expectations are being met today, right now, and in all the different parts of your life, not just at work. You'll think through how these performance expectations from the different people in your inner circle, how they affect each other, looking perhaps for the first time at these central relationships in your life as an interdependent system, and asking whether this system has integrity. That is, whether and how the pieces fit together as an integral whole, as one. And I'll teach you a simple framework for thinking about how you use different forms of communication, different media, to connect with these key stakeholders, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, whatever means you use to connect with the people in your life. I think you'll find it interesting to do that analysis. Next week, you'll prepare for and start conducting actual dialogues with some of your key stakeholders to verify your assumptions and to see what things really look like through their eyes. This is often the most challenging part of our course and the most rewarding as you gain new insight into what truly matters to your most important people. So now is a good time to start scheduling those conversations. Keep it simple. If you can find 2 stakeholders for each domain, that's a good target. For many past participants, these exercises have meant going from feeling resentment over what they believed others were demanding and being pulled in too many different directions to feeling instead supported by close associates and loved ones, and therefore better able to respond confidently to life's challenges. These exercises help you to better understand what the most important people in your life expect of you, and this helps you meet their expectations more productively. Anticipating these dialogues is often a peak anxiety point in the journey of our course. It's common for participants to fear that what's expected of them is more than what they want to deliver, or what they believe they are capable of delivering. But don't worry. From many years of experience, I can confidently predict that if you prepare, these conversations will make you feel better about your important relationships, strengthening them. Here's what a couple of alumni said about what they took away from their dialogues.
The other surprising thing I found with stakeholders was how willing they are to help. As soon as you express to them what your expectations are and what your goals are, how easy it was. There they were like, yeah, I'll help you do that. Or, here's another idea that you can use to help you get where you need to go. And it was so easy. I just sat there wondering why I hadn't asked before.
The idea of having that safe conversation, we can just go, hey, look, I'm just trying to learn for a class. That, for me, was a great door opener that made me learn a lot about personal dynamics that I had no clue of.
Of course, you don't have to have these conversations if you don't want to. Like everything else in our course, it's entirely up to you. Again, I'm confident that your dialogues will be fruitful and serve to build trust and gain support for your vision of the kind of leader you want to become. That's what usually happens. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Next week, I'll do everything I can to get you ready for your dialogues so they are indeed productive and result in richer connections with the people who matter most to you. Okay, let's find out who your key stakeholders are. The definition of the term key stakeholder is pretty straightforward. These are the people who have a stake in your future. Last week, we talked about what matters to you, how important each domain is, the values and goals you pursue in each one, where you focus your attention, and how satisfied you are with each part of your life. Now, it's about who matters most. In this week's assignment, I'll ask you to identify the 3 or 4 most important people in each domain, what they expect of you, and how well you think you're doing in meeting their performance expectations. It'll be great if, starting next week, you can indeed have dialogues with all of them, but I know that this might not be possible. So again, try for 2 dialogues per domain, with the self-domain naturally excluded because that would mean talking to yourself. So you'd have a minimum total of 6 dialogues. Your stakeholders can be anyone and anywhere in any aspect of your world that you deem important. And they don't all have to be people. One student identified the birds surrounding his home as a key stakeholder group in his community domain. He'd been feeding these birds for years and felt responsible for them. So you too should feel free to identify whomever you'd like as your key stakeholders. Over the years, I've heard many questions about the domain of community or society. What does that mean? Some people struggle to define what it means for them. Again, this is subjective, and it's up to you to decide. Now, the community or society domain isn't just about where you might do a community service, if you do any of that sort of thing at all. Rather, it's useful to think of community or society as including the people in your life beyond your work and your family. This could be your friends, your church, your neighbors, your role as a citizen, and so forth. It could include, again, the broader social interests that you may not currently have a personal connection with. It might be the person who delivers your mail. It could be the conductor on the bus you take to work. Or it could be the people you see daily in your neighborhood, even though you may not really know them that well. Your community is however you define it. Now, by asking you to consider the community domain, I am not at all suggesting that you should be involved in community service or that you should have a lot of friends. Indeed, your social circle could be very small. There's nothing in our course that should make you feel compelled to have certain values, to think of certain ways of living, or to have certain aspirations for your life. It's all about your choices as a leader in all the parts of your life and the alignment between what you care about, your values, and what you do, your actions. Students in the past have benefited from feedback from their classmates and from others, people who can point out gaps in the categories of stakeholders that you select. For example, someone may point out that you have no key stakeholders whom you work with on a day-to-day basis. That's possible. Observations such as these can help you to rethink or evaluate your relationships with those who you think are most important to you, as well as those you interact with most frequently. So be open to changing your list of stakeholders, even as you're thinking about who they are. When you articulate the expectations you have of people and the expectations you think they have of you, it's not uncommon to realize that people you thought are or should be stakeholders really aren't as important to your future as you once thought in the past. College students, for example, sometimes realize that their relationships with their parents are entering a new phase. And after they think about it, they realize that their parents, looking forward into the future, are becoming less important as stakeholders or different in the way that they relate to each other. Another example might be a colleague from a former career who becomes more of a social friend than a work colleague. Naturally, all kinds of changes happen in the people who matter most to you throughout life. Just as with all the assignments in our course, it's useful to see them as drafts, beginnings, because you are, after all, a work in progress. In thinking about key stakeholders, there may be certain people in your life with whom you might not feel comfortable initiating a conversation about mutual performance expectations. For example, you may feel that it would be awkward or inappropriate to engage in a formal stakeholder dialogue with your parents. If there is such a person or a group of people who are central to your life, however, I urge you to keep them in the list, in your analysis, and include them when you're thinking through who your stakeholders are. You can decide later about whether and how to have a conversation that elicits the information you need to know about your mutual performance expectations. And if, after thinking it through, you eventually feel that you really can't have a conversation with this person at this time, then you might want to consider having a conversation with someone else who can help you understand the expectations that exist for you in that role. There's lots of flexibility here. Again, stakeholders can be anybody in your life. They need not be people who you see as having authority over you. Indeed, for example, if you have children, you could include them as key stakeholders and think about having conversations or dialogues with them, even if they're very young. All right, let's now dig a little deeper in this next video about how you think about the most important people in your life. So what we'll look at next is the performance expectations that you and your stakeholders have of each other.